All right, we are making our way through hell. We are in Canto 17 today with the usurers. So again, brief overview. We've made it through the incontinent. We've made it through most of the violent. That is violent against neighbor, violent against self, violent against God. And you can be violent against one's a person and their object. So the tyrants and the robbers, the suicides and the squanderers, and the blasphemers and the sodomites, violent against God and God's goods, God's possessions, which is nature. So you're violent against nature, that's represented by sodomy. But here we have in 17, we have the usurers. And so what are the usurers doing in the violent? So back in Canto 11, Virgil had said this to Dante, explaining what the usurers were doing. Dante says, this is line 94 of Canto 11. Return, if you will, I said, to that place where you stated that usury offends the divine bounty, and untie that knot. Why are the usurers in this third wheel where the object of violence is God and God's goods? Why is usury here? Virgil says, philosophy, to him who understands, notes, and not in one place only, how nature takes her course and flows from the divine intellect and his art, right? Nature flows from God. Nature is the expression of God's goodness and the manifestation of his power and will as he creates and speaks creation into being. So nature is the signature of God. Nature is the artistry of God. Nature is the creation of God's love. And also, if you note your physics well, you will find, not after not many pages, that your art follows nature as it can, as a disciple follows its master. So what you make, the things you create as a human being, Dante, follows after the things that God makes. Why? Because we are sub-creators. We are made in the image of God, and so we create in the image of God, such that our creations imitate God's creations. And then he has this great line, such that your art, so that your art follows nature as it can, as a disciple follows its master, such that your art is the grandchild of God. So you have God, God's goods, which is nature, and then God's grandchildren, which are the things that we make, our creations. From these two, remembering Genesis and how all began, man must draw his life, advancing to the lives of his people. This is what we are to do. We are to be creating. We are to be making things. We are to be creating in the image of God, producing in the image of God, because that's what God does. And we are like him. We are made in his image. We are to be like him. And so we must also create. But usurers keep to a different path. They disparage both nature in herself and her student. They disparage both nature, they disparage the things God has made, and they disparage the things that man has made, placing their hope elsewhere. Their hope is not in what is being produced, but in what they can make by extortion through high interest loans, right? They're making their livelihoods on nothing, really, right? They're not producing anything. They're simply making money on money. And money isn't really a thing, right? Money isn't a product. Money is simply a means of transaction. And that's what they're making money on. So they're disparaging both God's creation, the who we are and who we were created to be, and the things that we make, God's grandchildren. So that's what Dante has said through the poet Virgil. That's what the poet Dante has said about usury thus far, and now we're going to see the usurers themselves, and a couple other things going on. So remember, at the end of 16, this giant something was rising up out of the abyss, and so now we're going to meet that something. Canto 17. Behold there the beast with the spear-like tail flying over mountains, breaking walls and arms, Behold that which makes all the world to reek. So began my leader to speak to me. He gestured to the beast to come ashore close to the end of the marble pathway. And that filthy image of fraud came on, beaching his head and chest on the cliff top, though he did not put his tail on the bank. His face bore the semblance of a just man, and his outward appearance such kindness, while the rest of his trunk was serpentine. He had 2 clawed feet, hair to the armpits, and a back, a breast, and both sides painted with designs of knots and of small bucklers. Neither Tartars nor Turks ever made cloth, groundwork, or embroidery with more hues, nor were such webs woven by Arachne. As punts sometimes rest on the river bank, partly in the water, partly on land, and just as between the piggish Germans the beaver readies itself for its war, so the awful beast was setting himself on the rim of rock enclosing the sand. All of his tail was darting in the void, twisting upwards the forked, venomous tip, just like the scorpion that arms its tail. My leader said, now our pathway must bend itself a little upwards toward that beast, which, malevolent, is lying over there. Therefore we descended on the right side and took 10 steps along the furthest edge, making sure to avoid the sand and flame. And after we had come to him, I saw people on the sand a little beyond, sitting close to the place that falls away. There my master said, so that you may take the fullest experience from this wheel, go to them, consider their condition. Let your conversation with them be brief. I will speak with this beast till you return, so that he may lend us his strong shoulders. Okay, so at the end of Canto 16, they had thrown a rope, Dante's belt, down, and that got the attention of this beast who came swimming up and has beached himself on the edge of the cliff, which means they are on the edge of a great abyss. They're on the edge of this cliff face that goes down, down, down to the 8th circle. Now, remember from Canto 11 that in circles 8 and 9, you have the sin of fraud being punished. Circle 8 is broken into 10 ditches. We'll get there in the next video. But that is where fraud simple is being punished. Fraud against those against those with whom you have no special bond of trust or friendship, just strangers or just commoners. Circle 9 is where complex fraud or treachery is being punished, and that is fraud committed against those with whom you do have a special bond of trust or love. Again, we'll get there later. But this beast, as the beasts have been up to this point, the beast that rises up out of that abyss resembles or symbolizes in some way the sin that is down there. And so we have this beautiful face. This beast has a beautiful face, just, handsome, lovely, signifying kindness. But then behind it is this dragon body, right? This serpentine body with wings and claws and hairy armpits, and it's just gross, right? So the distinction, right, the contradiction between the face and the body is this picture in bestial symbolic form, this picture of fraud, right? It looks good on the outside, but it's not really. The usurers, as we've seen in various places, like in the Styx, you have the violent, the wrathful, who exist in this kind of threshold realm between the incontinent in circles 2 through 4, and then the violent in 6 and 7, especially 7. The Styx is this liminal space, this threshold space that's in between. So they are incontinent, but they signal something of what's to come with the violent, right? So to here, the usurers are sitting right on the edge, almost hanging their legs off the cliff, if you will. So they're sitting there right on the edge. And so that communicates something of this transitory, this liminal threshold space where they're signaling to the kind of sin that's coming down in circle 8, fraud. Now, the difference between fraud and usury is that there is no deception with usury. It's all out there. This is the credit card company that states clearly in the fine print that 40% APR is is the penalty for not paying your balance in full. And so there are the card sharks. There are the people who are out there, the loan sharks, not the card sharks, the loan sharks, who are clearly stating in their material, in their literature, that they are going to be fleecing you if you don't pay your balance on time. So it's not deception, right? These people have not deceived anyone. They're just wicked, right? They're going against God's law, and they are despising creation, and instead are making money on money, and making money on people who are in dire straits specifically. So this beast has come up. Virgil says, you go talk with those guys over there, make use of this time. I'm going to go talk to this guy. By the way, his name is Geryon. That hasn't been mentioned yet. I'm going to go talk to Geryon and ask him if he can bring us down to the 8th circle. So while I do that, you go make yourself useful, redeem this time, and go chat with the folks over there. Thus I went on to the outermost edge of that 7th circle, all on my own, and walked where those unhappy people sat. Despondency burst outward through their eyes. With their hands they tried to protect themselves here, there, from the fire wind, from the hot sand, not unlike a pack of dogs in summer, first with snout, then with foot, trying to ward off the biting of fleas, of flies, or horseflies. Then I looked into the face of some on whom the painful fire was descending. Not one of them I knew, but I noticed that from each neck hung a purse, each bearing a certain color and a certain sign. And it seemed that their eyes feasted on these. As I came among them, looking closely, I saw on a yellow purse a bright blue that bore the face and frame of a lion. Then my gaze proceeding along its course, I saw another one, as red as blood, featuring a goose whiter than butter, and one whose little white sack was marked by a bright blue pregnant sow, then said to me, "What are you doing down here in this ditch? Now leave. But since you are also alive, know that Vitaliano, my fellow townsman, will join me here at my left hip. I am a Paduan amidst Florentines. Often they speak, thundering in my ears, crying out, Let come the sovereign cavalier, who will bring the coin purse with the 3 goats." So here he ends his speech, but each of these little purses around the neck signify not only coin purses, like where they put their hope in money, they put their hope in their wallets, their coin purses, but also they all have these little crests on them, which signify the different houses in Florence at this time. So Dante is very clearly identifying known families and known houses in late 13th century, early 14th century Florence. Here, twisting his mouth, he stuck out his tongue, just like an ox licking his own nostrils. Fearing a longer stay might afflict more the one who had cautioned me to be brief, I left those miserable souls behind. I found my leader had already climbed onto the back of the fierce animal. Then he said, "Now be strong and courageous. From here we descend by this kind of stair. Mount up in front, I wish to be between, so that his tail can do you no evil." Like one with the quartan fever shivers, with nails already pale, trembling with cold at the slightest apprehension of shade, so I became as these words were given. But shame made its threats to me, which always strengthens the servant before a good lord. I settled myself on those huge shoulders. I wanted to say, "Yes," but no voice came, like I thought it would. "Make sure you hold me." But he, who had saved me at other times, from other perils, bound me in his arms, and held me up as soon as I mounted. He said, "Geryon, now move. Let your turns be broad, and let your descending be slow. Consider the strange burden you carry." as the little boat puts out from its berth backwards, backwards, in such a way he left, after he felt himself free of the edge. He turned his tail to where his chest had been, fully stretched it out, moving like an eel, and with his clawed feet gathered up the air. I believe no greater fear was felt when Pantheon let go the reins, and the sky above was blackened as it still appears. For when the miserable Icarus felt his lower back fleeced by the warmed wax, his father crying to him, "Don't go that way," than was mine. So he's saying, I believe no greater fear was felt by these two characters than was mine when I saw myself airborne on either side, every sight extinguished from my vision, save the sight of that beast. He slides downward, swimming slowly. Slowly he turns, descends. I would have known nothing but for the wind from below on my face. I was already hearing the whirlpool on my right, horribly booming below, for which I stuck out my head, looking down. Then I became more afraid of our fall, for I saw fires and heard weeping, whence I, trembling with fear, gripped harder with my thighs. Then I saw what I did not see before, the descent and turning from great evils that were crowding in from different corners. As the falcon that has long been in flight, without noticing either lure or bird, makes the falconer say, "Oh, you come down," falls exhausted, wherefore it moves swiftly through 100 turnings, and alights far from its master, full of disdain and spite. So Geryon set us down on the floor, at the very foot of the jagged cliff, and, unburdening our persons, vanished, as the arrow from the string disappears. All right, so now they are down in the abyss. They are in the 8th circle, and this is where things get even more gross, even more despicable, even more violent, even more horrible, as the punishments get worse, as the sin that is being punished is getting worse and worse. And you may ask, why? How can you be worse than murder? How can you be worse than sodomy? How can you be worse than lust and avarice and all of these different sins? Well, according to Dante's taxonomy of sin, we have the incontinent, who are not using their reason at all. You have the violent, who are using a mixture of passion and reason. And here, there's no passion. It is all cold, calculating, corrupt intellects that have misused that faculty that unite us to God, that clearly image the nature of God in the image of God, that faculty of reason that has now been corrupted and used for wicked ends, for selfish ends. And those are the kinds of sins that we're going to now see in full as he goes through the next 2 circles and the next 17 cantos. So, until next time.